Felix, you're muted.
Welcome you all to Science Leadership Workshop next session. And please join me to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Anindita Bhadra. Dr. Bhadra is elected as co-chair of Global Young Academy recently, a few weeks back, last week I would say. Congratulations, ma'am, for being elected as a very prestigious Global Young Academy and co-chair. I'm still I'm on, I guess. Dr. Yogalakshmi, could you hear?
Yeah, you're clear, sir. Go on. Hello. Hello. I think there's a connection with your net.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yes.
You're clear now, sir. You go ahead.
Okay, just a minute. Okay, speaker, double speaker is on. Go back to your presentation window. Okay, so Dr. Anindita Bhadra is elected as a co-chair of the Global Young Academy, prestigious Global Young Academy. It's an academy for the young researchers based in Germany. Only 1 week back, and congratulations so much, Dr. Bhadra, for this great achievement as a top of the Global Young Academy. And she has been elected as a founding chair of the INEA. So it is actually her initiatives, and as a INSA with the INSA fellows. And she was also an awardee of the INSA Young Scientist. And her initiatives resulted in the formation of the INEAS, the academy that I'm also now belongs to. It was in 2015. So right now serving as associate professor in the Department of Biological Sciences in ISER, Kolkata, where she's working with behavioral ecology, especially with the urban dog ecosystem. How the dog plays role in urban ecology. So she has done a fantastic job, and some of her research work has been featured in BBC and other world media as well. And she's a recipient of prestigious INSA Young Scientist Award in 2009. And she holds PhD from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, under the guideship of Professor Raghvendra Gadakar. And she has also won SERB Women Excellence Award in 2013. And right now she's also working as Associate Dean of International Relationship and Outreach in ISER, Kolkata. I welcome you, ma'am, for this, our workshop. And this session is co-moderated by my colleague, Dr. Yogalakshmi. Dr. Yogalakshmi Nandabalan is working as associate professor in the Center for, it's a Department of Environmental Science and Technology here in Central University of Punjab. She herself is a science leader. So over to you, ma'am, for some introductory comments.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Felix. Good evening, everyone. At the outset, I would like to welcome the participants and the speaker of the day, Dr. Anindita Bhadra, a young aspiring science leader. Without any further delay, I would like to welcome her and to share her thoughts. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks a lot, Felix and Yogalakshmi, for the kind introduction and the welcome messages. So let me start by sharing the screen with my slides. Felix, just let me know if the screen is shared.
All is well, yes, go ahead.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. And I hope we will have questions. I was actually moderating the morning session and I could see that a lot of questions were coming up. So I'm also hoping that in this session, we will have more questions from all of you, and that's what I would like to take on during the talk, rather than speaking about only what I think about this very important issue of science outreach. So when Felix asked me to give this talk, I asked him, what topic would you like me to speak on? And he said, why don't you talk about building public trust in science? and the role of communication and outreach. And this is something that is very close to both of our hearts. And I immediately agreed. So thanks, Felix, for giving me that topic. So this is what I'm going to speak to you about. And on the slide, as you can see, there are the three organizations that Felix mentioned that I am associated with. Of course, the Global Young Academy right now. And for the last 4 years, ISER Kolkata, I've been there for the last 11 years. And the International Young Academy of Science, which is also the co-host of this workshop, which I have been associated with since its founding in 2014. So when we talk of leadership, the question is, what is leadership? If you ask this question, you are going to get a lot of different kinds of answers depending on who you're asking this question to. There are umpteen number of courses out there which teach people leadership skills, and these are typically corporate leadership skills that are talked about. And the primary kind of major key phrases that you hear associated with leadership are some of the things that I've put on this particular slide. You're going to hear that a leader is someone who stands out among a crowd and typically leads from the front. A leader is someone who has the capacity to build a team that will stick together. So team building and camaraderie, something that the leader promotes. A leader sets new challenges for her team, and also not just sets challenges, but also charts new paths and territories for the team to follow. The leader, a good leader, does not just lead, but also nurtures new leaders and future leaders, and is, of course, someone who is inclusive. Today morning, Ram has spoken extensively about being inclusive. So anyone who is in a leadership role needs to be inclusive, needs to respect diversity, bring in people, bring in different ideas, people from different backgrounds, different genders, different sexualities, all of this together builds an inclusive institution. But is that all that is to a leader? When I asked myself this question, I thought that all of this, yes, but then there is much more to being a leader. If I ask myself, who am I? Do I see myself as a leader? I would say, I don't know. It would basically be the people who I work with who will have to decide whether I am a leader or not. I cannot decide that I am a leader. No matter what position I am in, I might get a position by virtue of my credentials, or I get elected into a position, or I get promoted into a position. That automatically does not make me a leader. Today morning, Ram was also mentioning, and I kind of resonated with this, when we are in academics, we are expected to do research. In my PhD life, I'm supposed to be doing my research. And then suddenly, moment you finish your PhD, you go for a postdoc, you get more training and learn more techniques and more things and come back. And then you apply for an academic position and you are suddenly expected to teach without having much teaching experience all your life, for most PhD students, at least in India. And then moment you become a faculty in a university or an institute, you are given academic administrative responsibilities. You become a head of the department, you become dean, you become heads of committees, you have to assess students when they come in, you sit in PhD interviews, you sit in selection interviews, depending on the position that you are in. And all of this you're expected to do without any leadership training. So what makes you a leader? You have to learn to be a leader, and you have to be accepted by your peer group as the leader. Just by virtue of your position, someone does not become a leader. Becoming a leader is all of this and a lot more. I'm not going to give you a big lecture on how to become a leader, because I don't know whether I have been able to become one either. All of us emerge into these different roles and evolve with them as we grow. But I will talk about something very important: the need to communicate if you are in a leadership role. All of us need to communicate, and leaders need to communicate very well. Here on the slide, you see an image. It's a network of communications. I'm not going to tell you what this is right now. I'll tell you probably in the end, because otherwise you're not going to take me seriously. But what I'm going to talk about with this slide on is how important communication is for building a good team. A leader cannot work well if the team is not working together. If there are, all of us know, if there are factions within a department, the department cannot function well. If there are many voices within an institution and these voices are not heard, which gives rise to a lot of disturbance, the institute cannot function well. So for good teamwork, you need good communication among the peer group and between the leader and the different individuals in the group. You need to not only have a communication system, you need to make it efficient. You need to have regularity of communication, and only by this you can build trust between members of a team. People need to tell each other what they're thinking. They need to tell each other what they're working on. They need to exchange ideas. They need to plan and strategize together. They need to problem solve together. Only then we can work as a team. If you look at societies, not just human societies, I'm a behavioral biologist. I study dog societies. I have studied wasp societies during my PhD. So from insects to humans, whatever social system we are looking at, the very, very key criteria for a social system to be functional is to have a good communication system. And I told you, I'm going to tell you in the end what this particular very involved network structure is. This is the network of a group. The light colored blue circles of different sizes are a set of puppies and their mother here, and then other dogs in the group. And these are basically play networks within a social group of a dog. Doesn't matter what kind of social network you're looking at, it's a network and it's social. So there are connections of different kinds, and they're all very important to make a team robust. Now, if you're a scientist, you can communicate like this, as I said, in the network among your team members, but you also need to communicate to people outside of your team. All people need to do it in academics. I think we need to do it all the more. You need to communicate with the outer world. You need to advertise. You need to talk to people outside to tell them what you're doing. If you're an institution, you need to advertise about your achievements. You need to tell people across the country what your NIRF ranking this year is. You need to advertise for PhD positions, faculty positions, all kinds of things. If you're a research group, you need to advertise for positions. You need to tell people what work you do. You need to have a good web page where students, prospective students, can go and find you, can look up your publications, can look at your projects, can look at the students that you have, and maybe interact with them. So you need to advertise yourself to the outer world. And again, very importantly, you need to also build a social network, which is not just internal, but also external. You need to engage with your partners. We need to engage with collaborators. We need to talk to other faculty in the department. We need to talk to people in different disciplines, because today we are doing interdisciplinary research everywhere. We need to talk to funding agencies. We need to talk to private funders. So there should be different kinds of partners that we engage with. And we just cannot be an individual with his or her group of students talking to each other about their research going on in their lab. Now, I'm going to shift gear a bit from the scientist's point of view and look at it as us from the other point of view. Who is a scientist? If you ask this question to a random person on the road, if I tell you, in the morning when your vendor comes to deliver milk, if you grab him and ask him, do you know who a scientist is? What kind of answers are you expected to get? In India, if you ask random people on the streets, many of them would not even be able to answer. But if they do, the image out here kind of represents what people's notion of a scientist often is. A guy with uncombed hair, or hair like Einstein, wearing thick framed and heavy glasses, holding a test tube and wearing a white lab coat. This is the image of a scientist that very often people have. Most school textbooks, I have 2 children at home, and if I look at them, there would be a stage in every child's school life when there will be either an EVS book or a general knowledge book, which will say these are the different professions. There'll be an image in GK, and you will have to match the name of the profession with the image. There will be a nurse, there will be a teacher, there will be a doctor, there'll be a policeman, even a postman, even though children hardly ever see postmen these days. But rarely have I seen a book which gives an image of a scientist. Scientists are not even perceived as, career people which students should learn about in their early life. I remember when my son was in class 2, I think in one of their classes, the teacher was asking them to write, 10 sentences about what would you want to be when you grow up. And fortunately or unfortunately for our son, he has a set of parents who are both scientists. So of course he said, I want to be a scientist. And his teacher said, no, what you mean is you want to be a teacher or a professor. So he said, no, I want to be a scientist, like my parents. And the teacher said, no, but your parents are professors. There's nothing called a scientist. You can't be a scientist. So that is the perception of scientists in the society. It's nothing to do with the teacher or the person. It is to do with the common perception that society has about scientists, who we are. We don't exist as a community in public perception. And this is something I would like all of you to ponder on, because I know majority of the participants are coming from a science background. This is something we really need to think about. I'm going to tell you of a small experiment that we are doing from the GYA for some time now. I'd started this in India, and later we have now done it in a few other places. So we ask school children of different age groups to draw a scientist. So here you see on the slide a set of kids. This is in Vietnam, where we were doing this as part of a conference outreach activity. So the children had been asked to come to attend a science workshop, and during this workshop, they were asked to draw what they think a scientist looks like. And these are the kids now looking at their own drawings. And on the left here, these are the 3 drawings which finally won a prize. Of course, you see here Einstein. You see here Einstein, and then actually a representation of Gregor Mendel doing his pea plant experiments. And the first prize went to the kid who drew this girl in a lab coat. We were also impressed that she had actually drawn a woman scientist to begin with. But what we have been seeing, and the other set of images are from a competition that we had done with school children in IISER Kolkata. And the majority of drawings that come to us have males. They often have replicas of Einstein. In India, we also get a few other scientists from India, like Shoten Bose, like Prafullo Chandra Roy, depending on whether they have studied about them in class. And it's mostly male, and mostly people with test tubes or beakers, and wearing a white lab coat. So that is the notion of a scientist. But of course, I'm a scientist. I never wear a lab coat in my lab. I never have a test tube in my hand, as many of you would be. Scientists who do not wear lab coats, who are not male, who don't look half mad, or don't look like people who forget their specs all the time. So that is, we are deviations from the public perception of what a scientist should be looking like. Why am I saying this? Because this matters. This is also a reflection of how society sees this group of people called scientists, whom they don't really see out there in the public as professionals. Talking of science and society, these are clips from 3 different newspapers. I have not put the names of the newspapers on purpose. Last week, all of you know that this Sunday we had an annular solar eclipse, which was all over social media and on TV channels, and there was a very nice live telecast going on, conducted by astronomers from IUCAA and IIA, and there was a lot of enthusiasm about this solar eclipse. But just before the eclipse, This is a news item which came out in different newspapers, was talked about in many news channels, because apparently some scientists had claimed that the COVID-19 pandemic is going to vanish with the solar eclipse, because it had started with the 26th December total solar eclipse in 2019. Neither did the pandemic start with the solar eclipse, nor did it, of course, end with the solar eclipse, and all of us knew it. Now, what was very peculiar about this piece of news was there was a photograph of the scientist and his name. It even said he was a nuclear scientist or something, but without an affiliation. Now, all of us would know that if I am a scientist, I would be engaged in some organization. You might have freelancer journalists, you might have freelance artists, but you don't have freelancer scientists. That's not possible. I might think I'm a scientist, but if I am a scientist by profession, I have to have an affiliation. None of the news channels reported an affiliation of this person. And of course, this claim which was made was completely unfounded. It was completely unscientific. And a lot of scientists actually spoke out against it. There was discussion on social media, tweets put up telling newspapers to take this news down, but the harm had been done. And I would say more than the person who said this was highly irresponsible journalism. So the media is to be blamed for putting up something as wrong as this at a time when the pandemic is there on everybody's mind. And this is creating a lot of noise and, of course, getting attention for the news channels. But this is simply not done. And here again is the role of the scientist to communicate with the society, communicate with the media. And that is what I'm going to highlight in my next few slides. So what role do scientists need to play in society, and what role do they play in society? If you talk to scientists, they are, of course, highly engaged in their own research, be it lab-based research, be it field-based research like I do. All of us, of course, spend a lot of time and energy on our research. That is what we are passionate about. We often spend a lot of time in front of our computers, looking at our data, analyzing data, sending emails, communicating with our students, communicating papers. All of this is something that we are all the time doing. We spend a lot of time teaching our students because many of us are engaged in full-time teaching because we are from universities or institutions like ISERS, where we have to spend equal amount of time and research and teaching. Of course, we go to conferences, we network with our peer group, we share our research with the national, international audience, we talk about it, we collaborate, we do more interactions around our science. And of course, what we are required to do, we write papers, sometimes we write books, and we put our research out there for people to find. So this is our output, and through our students, through conference talks, through webinars like this, through the writings that we do. And often we are very grumpy when we are talking about society and scientists. We say that there is always lack of funding for research. We often complain that governments are putting a lot of thrust on applied research. We do not have the liberty to do basic research. We do not have the liberty to do blue skies research. And of course, all of us understand that if you do not do basic research, then tomorrow's applied research will not happen. So basic research has to go on. And of course, as a community, we all understand this. We crib a lot about the lack of good students who are motivated to do science and research, who good students go into engineering, they go into medical, these days they go into law, they go and do management, they do not come to science. This is a common problem that we discuss all the time in academics. We say in India, at least, we have a lack of good research universities, we have a lack of infrastructure. I want to buy that equipment, but my institute doesn't have funds. I did not get a grant. I cannot buy this. I had bought an equipment on a grant. The grant is over. My institute has not given me money to maintain my equipment. The equipment is not working any longer. When an equipment goes bad, I call the engineer. They take 3 months to come and my research suffers. All of these are issues that we face, at least in our country. And I know in the global south, I talk about it with my friends in other countries, we all face these issues. And we are very upset about public interest or the lack of it, and public trust in science. So people don't really trust scientists. They go to people, they go to astrologers, they believe in all kinds of superstitions. They don't call scientists for panel discussions on news channels. They don't call experts. People really don't think about telling their kids to study science and take up science as a career in the future. So there is no trust in science and there is no public interest in science. These are major issues that concern all of us, and I'm sure all of us have talked about it in our peer groups, and this is something that we keep talking about. But then what do we do about it? Because there's one thing to say these are the problems, but a leader has to find solutions to the problems. Giving you a list of problems is not what I'm here for. And that is where I come to what I keep telling my students and my friends. Why should the public care about what you do? You do your science because you like it. You like a model system, you like a particular question, you are interested in certain proteins, you're interested in certain materials. You have made a material and you want to heat it, you want to cool it, you want to put it under pressure, all kinds of things. But why should the public care? Why will they be interested in what you do inside your labs? Please ignore the last line, some problem with the animation. Let's begin at the beginning. So scientific research, at least in India, is largely funded by public money. And this is why we need governments and policymakers to trust our science, to understand how important research is, and to give us funding. But we have to understand that this public money comes from us. We pay taxes, and that is what the government gives us back in terms of our research funding. So it is the responsibility of the scientists, not the policymakers, to reach out to the public and to explain to them why we need this money, why the question I'm asking is interesting, why we need to do this research. Today, if you tell the public that we need to spend 200 crores in COVID-19 research, nobody will say no. Everybody is asking, when are we going to get the vaccine? When are we going to get the medicine? When is this pandemic going to get over? Today, vaccine is a common word which is being spoken in every household every day, probably. Today, we are talking about plasma therapy. Today, people are talking about antibodies. Today, all of these terminologies are common household terms. But then, if you ask people in 2019 November, should we spend more money in science? Should I spend more money on virus research? People would say no. You know, our neighbors might attack, spend more money on defense. We don't have jobs, create more job opportunities, build better roads, improve the railways. These are things that people can see, people can feel the need of, and people will ask the government to invest in. But science is not so tangible. It is very hard to explain when people ask, when we are talking about COVID-19 in different platforms, a common question is, why don't we still have a vaccine? Everybody is doing so much research. Why is it taking so long? It's very difficult for people to understand how much time science takes to sort out a problem and come to a solution. Research doesn't happen overnight. And to make people understand this, we cannot trust policymakers. We cannot expect them to do it. It is our job to go out and tell people how we do our science and why we do our science. It is also the responsibility of the scientists to motivate young people. Go talk to school children. Do not talk. So I have had people saying, if I want to do outreach, we should do outreach only in the undergrad colleges or even the universities, because our next batch of PhD students are going to come from there. I would say no, please don't talk about your next batch of PhD students. Talk about building a society where everybody is interested in science, motivated to study science. Everybody does not have to become a scientist, but they have to think in terms of science. They have to be interested in scientific research. And that is why we need to engage with society. And only then we can build public trust in science. So my take-home messages would be, we need to talk to the media, because that is what helps us to reach out to a large number of people. When you publish your research in a journal, please share it with science journalists. It is very unfortunate when I hear colleagues saying, oh, people write about your research, that means your research is not serious enough because lay people can understand your research. I'm sorry, no. If I am doing research with public money, it is my job to explain my research to a 10-year-old child if he or she wants to understand my research, because their parents have paid taxes which have gone into my research funding. If my fish vendor asks me, what do you do? It is my job to explain what I do to this person in a language that he will understand, because his tax money has gone into my research funding. We need to go and talk to school children. We need to motivate them. We need to talk in their terms and motivate them to ask questions. Unfortunately, our school education treats the students like sponges, where they have to just absorb things. And then when the exam comes, they'll be squeezed and everything will just pop out on the answer screens. They are not sponges to be squeezed. They are like sponges. They can absorb a lot. But we need to choose what they absorb and let us give them science to absorb at a level which they can understand. Make science fun to learn, fun to do. Let them do hands-on stuff, get their hands dirty, burn their fingers a bit if necessary, but let them do things. Let them understand the magic of nature. Let them understand how things are connected to each other. That is how they'll ask questions. That is how they'll develop a scientific temper. The slide you see here has two snapshots from two websites. First one is this curiosity episode, and you see the name of Felix Bast. I put it here on purpose. Felix, our host, he is an excellent science communicator, and this is what he does regularly. This is his channel. Please go to YouTube and subscribe. He does this shows called Curiosity. And there are many people like Felix in the country and worldwide who try to do a lot of science outreach. They share their research, general concepts of science through popular articles, talks, YouTube videos, all kinds of things, all kinds of media. Now it is easy to reach out if you want to reach out. And this is our job. We have to be active in taking the excitement of science out to kids, out to the common public. And the other image you see here is a snapshot from this website called Indian Scientists' Response to COVID-19, which is, again, an initiative that many of us, including Felix, are engaged in right now. These are a group of scientists and science journalists, artists who have all come together to spread public awareness of science, put up scientific information, do hoax busting, myth busting, all kinds of things like will bats spread coronavirus? Should we cut down all fruiting trees? Will I get COVID-19 if I do XYZ? Will I not get COVID-19 if I drink this concoction, or if I eat this kind of food? All kinds of things that people are spreading on social media. We are trying to bust these hoaxes, and we are trying to put in a lot of scientifically correct information for people in different Indian languages and English. But this is only an example. We need to do it at all times, not just for COVID-19, but throughout our lives. We need to do this. Speak up against pseudoscience, bust such myths and hoaxes, spread the temper of science among the common people. So I am very happy that INEAS is constantly engaged in doing workshops for school children, college students, and now this workshop in science leadership. We are doing a lot of webinars right now on COVID-19. I would urge all of you to go and look up the INEAS YouTube channel, where you'll find recordings of all of these talks. At the Global Young Academy, science education, outreach, connecting people for science diplomacy, for policy, all of these are activities that we engage in. But this is not enough. We need to build a network which includes you. Organizations can do a lot of things on their own with their membership strength, but then there is a larger strength outside of scientists, science communicators, journalists, and the common public who need to engage with these organizations and among each other. You don't need to be part of an organization to talk science. You can do it. You can go talk science to your neighbor's children. You can go talk science to your grandmother. And that is how you can spread the spirit of science. And only by doing this, we can together build a society which is based on scientific temper and not on pseudoscience. I'm going to end by thanking the organizers of the Science Academy's India's Science Leadership Workshop, especially Felix. Of course, ENIAS, the 3 science academies, and Central University of Punjab. And of course, all the participants who are listening now and the ones who will be listening later, because it is only through engagement with you that we can make this workshop successful. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to take any questions from your side. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anindita. It was such a nice, fascinating, and stimulating lecture. Actually, you beautifully narrated like what is communication, how communication is important for a team or for a university or institute or for any organization for that matter. And you beautifully portrayed like what a scientist, what is a perception of a scientist, how people look at a scientist, and what is the role and responsibility of a scientist to go to the field and then convince them like why the basic science or the applied science is required. You said like in the COVID situation, people are asking for vaccine when it is about to come. Now, before that, people were not even thinking about that, like why science is required. So you actually, it was like, I mean, you portrayed it so well. And finally, you ended up like how communication can improve this through science talks, how you can motivate the young minds and also make them understand, even a layman should understand what a scientist is doing. And also you made people, I mean, scientists accountable for people's money, because we are all living in public money. So thank you so much. It was actually fascinating and it was enlightening. And we are very fortunate to hear from a very young, aspiring science leader. Yeah, with that, we'll get into the questions. Yeah, there's a question from Raghavendra. Why do people fall for pseudoscience and how can science academics fight back?
Why people fall for pseudoscience? See, if I give you a nice rounded story, which has connections to the mythologies that we have grown up with, you know, we like stories. Human beings like stories, and we have all grown up with fairy tales and mythologies and folklores, and a lot of the pseudoscience will give you a nice rounded story. For example, just before the solar eclipse, I was talking to a friend of my sister's was telling me that you know, in the mythology there is this thing about Rahu coming and eating up the sun. Of course, now we know that that's not true, but then I'll tell you the pseudoscience part now, which he told me. He said, but my mother gave me a scientific explanation for why I should not eat during the eclipse. And I said, okay, tell me. So the pseudoscience explanation is that apparently, because the sun is supposed to be there, the sunlight is supposed to be there for about 14 hours and then 10 hours dark. So bacterial life cycles are adjusted to this. It's very brilliant because if you have not heard that, you know, there are biological clocks. And then somebody says the biological clock of bacteria is attuned to 14 hours day and 10 hours night. And if you don't know too much about it, you will accept it because biological clocks are a fact and they're a scientific fact. And so when in the middle of this, the light goes off as if it's a load shedding, you know, there's a power cut. So light goes off for some 2 hours. Then the bacterial life cycle is, you know, readjusted and they start multiplying at night. So I told him, okay, but how did you know that bacteria only multiply at night? Because if they don't, then this doesn't work, right? So he said, but that I don't know. But apparently scientists have said that the clock gets readjusted and they multiply more because of this darkness in the middle of the day. And that is why you should not be eating, because all food gets contaminated. Okay, so there's a nice rounded story, nothing complex. And as opposed to that, if you typically ask a scientist, they are going to give you the R selected and K selected species. They are going to draw a curve. They are going to try and explain the science like a science student should understand. Now, if you are someone who is interested, you will try and understand. But if somebody is going to talk about it to a large mass of people, or spread it through social media and make it very simple to understand, the pseudoscience will be by its simplicity and the rounded nature of the story will get much more acceptance than the very complex, lot of mathematical formula, lot of jargon. That is the other thing that we scientists do. We use a lot of jargon. And in all of this, the story is lost. And somehow we feel that if you can tell a nice story, then it is not taken seriously, because stories are for kids, not for grown-ups, right? So stories are for kids, and that means it is not good science. But I would say, if you are a good scientist, if you understand what your science is, you should be able to build a scientifically correct story out of it, which even my 8-year-old daughter will understand. So part 2, what can science academies do about it? Do more outreach, do more public outreach, do webinars like this, do curiosity programs like Felix does, get more and more people engaged, and this costs nothing other than time, right? So that is what we need to do. We need to be out there. We need to be visible. This is the age of social media. We cannot say, I'm a scientist, I'm not on social media. I'm sorry, it doesn't work. You have to be on social media. You have to be connected. Like I said, you have to be connected in your peer group, but you also have to be connected to the larger world.
Very true. Thank you.
So yeah, it was really nice presentation, Anindita. I totally enjoyed it, especially your points about it's our collective responsibility as a scientist, because we are working with the public money to communicate the science to the masses. I think it's a very important point that you actually relayed it. And now coming to the questions, a lot of questions here. Let me pick up one question here. Deepak from Nagpur is asking, I would like to congratulate you for being part of Breakthrough Science Society that relentlessly fighting against superstitions and pseudoscience. Why can't organizations like INEAS and GYA associate with them to actively fight pseudoscience in the country?
Well, we do. In a sense that different organizations have different charters and different goals to work with. For example, in the GYA, we do a lot of outreach, international level outreach. We go when we do, meetings, where every meeting has an outreach component where we try and reach out to local children and spread awareness about science. But we have to also understand that organizations like the GYA are also involved in different levels with policymakers, because change has to happen at different levels. And one of the things that we try to do is, often when we talk of policies, when we talk of decisions, then the voices of younger people like us get lost. It is typically the older generation of people who are there taking decisions. And organizations like INEAS and GYA try to bring perspectives of younger people, their struggles, their viewpoints, and their contributions out into the policymaker forum. So that is another kind of responsibility that we also have as an organization. But we do a lot of activities where we try to do outreach. We don't really actively go and do myth busting probably, but what we do is, through our outreach events, we try to spread science and tell people not to go for the pseudoscience. So we work at a different level from Breakthrough Science Society.
Yeah, there's another question from Rashmi Singh. She is asking, is it possible to generate trust just by a good leadership communication? Do some other factors, is there any other factors that play a role?
A good leadership will build a team, and everyone in the team will have to be engaged. If you don't have good leadership, it will be individuals who will be doing things alone, and you will be able to only reach out to a smaller community. But under a good leadership, you can build a larger team and a larger network. That is how the leadership can help. But building trust in science will not just come through the leadership, but will actually come through the number of individuals who engage with the society at large. So the role of the leader is going to be in motivating people who will engage with society. And of course, the leader will have to do that herself or himself. It's the leader has to lead by example, not by sitting on a chair and instructing people to do it.
Thank you.
Here is a question from Shreya from Kolkata is asking, I came to know about your excellent YouTube channel and your theater, especially in Bengali. Can you share your experience with science communication through theater? Is theater a good media to penetrate the society?
It is because, when any kind of live art is a very good medium to connect with people, because people see you, be characters on stage, and they immediately connect to you if you are good at it. So, of course, theater, I would even say theater is stronger that way than film, because film has this disconnect, it's on a screen. But when there's a live person crying in front of you and laughing in front of you, that affects you emotionally. So of course, theater is a very good medium. We have done some theater ourselves. During the COVID-19, we have done a couple of pieces in Bangla and English. And even other than that, we have one theater which we do on live performances. And we have seen the response. People would spontaneously laugh and spontaneously jeer at a character on stage in a hall full of 400 students. You just see the reaction. That shows how much you can connect.
Yes, Yogeshwar.
Yeah, the next question is from Atharva. He's from Andhra Pradesh. He is asking, ma'am, most of the habits are developed at an early age. Could you please suggest some practical activities which can enhance student leadership?
Depends on what your interests are, right? There are many forums in which you can write depending on what you're interested in. I always encourage students to try and write about their work in layman's terms. You can write about, Resonance is a very good journal where students can contribute. You can write about, basic concepts. You can do reviews of interesting papers. You could do even biographical sketches. So writing is a very good way of reaching out to people. Write, get it published, share on social media. Nobody wants to publish your work, blog. Do YouTube channels. Felix can be a role model for that. Explain science, do small experiments. You do it with ask somebody to hold the camera in front of you. At home, you can do it. You are stuck at home during the pandemic. Stay at home and explain science to people. There's a lot you could do just sitting at home with a mobile camera these days if you have the internet. Locally, you can reach out to neighborhood children and do science fun science clubs. So you could sit and tell them stories, interesting stories about discoveries. Again, as I said, kids really relate to stories. So if you can talk about science, talk about journeys of scientists, not just the discovery, but journeys are very important. They leave a very good impact on young minds. So as somebody who is engaged in science themselves, they can engage with younger people. And I always think, the younger a child is, they are much easily motivated if you can talk to them at the right level. So even, making school science, which some of them might think boring, making it interesting by, making small models, explaining it in a different way, connecting it to different stories, that itself can be a very good way of doing science outreach, and you would emerge as a leader yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me pick up one question here. Yeah, Kriti Gupta is asking, ma'am, people are still believing in home remedies and Ayurvedic medicine to combat COVID. How to generate significant awareness at this time? Does it work? What is your view?
Okay. So I always take a different stand on this. I have tried telling people it doesn't work. It creates a lot of negativity. And then they will say, you know, you haven't been able to come up with a medicine. And I think this works and you're stopping me from taking it. What right do you have? Yes, I don't have a right. If you want to abuse your body, go ahead and do it. I don't have a right to stop. But what I tell people is, if something makes you feel good, for example, if I have a cold, I will have some ginger tea. It will make me feel good because the ginger will soothe my throat for some time. So if ginger tea makes you feel good, if haldi wali chai makes you feel good, go drink it. Nobody is stopping you. These are things the normal food. So they are not going to harm you much if you are not taking loads of it. Then even they might have side effects. But something which makes you feel good and makes you feel comfortable, have it. But if you have symptoms, please don't sit at home and drink your ginger tea. Please go see a doctor. If necessary, go do the tests. That is where I will put my foot down and then say, no, this is not done. You're risking yourself. You're risking me. You're risking my son. You're risking my daughter. You're risking the elderly person at home. This is not allowed. So sometimes being a little malleable helps. I have learned this with age.
There's a question from Vaishnavi. She is asking, when a student joins institutes like ICER, he or she is new to research. What are the ways to get more and more experience to do research as we learn a lot from the environment?
Once you join to do research, every day is going to be a learning experience, and it's going to be a lifetime thing. Every day I learn. I learn from my students, I learn from my peer, I learn from whatever I read. Research is research, right?
Yes, I got. Can you hear me? Got disconnected. Can you hear me, ma'am? Hello.
Yes, sir. You're clear.
Yeah.
I think, ma'am, she got disconnected. Yeah, she's back. No, she got disconnected.
We'll wait for her.
Yeah.
Hi,
Sorry.
welcome back. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I just
No.
finished what I was saying. So I was saying that, when you are joining a PhD program, no matter where, any institution in the world, It is your learning which which is going to give you a PhD. So as long as we are open, we are ready to learn, and we are open to criticisms, we should be fine.
Okay, so let me pick a question from Viku Mhatre. I don't know how you can pronounce this word. It looks like a South African name, M. Hatre. We have lots of international viewers here. So he's asking a question. He or she, I don't even know the gender of the person who is asking this question. How can yellow journalism, especially in conjunction with pseudoscience, be rooted out?
If more and more responsible scientists talk to responsible journalists, it's a matter of probability, right? Newspapers want to sell, and they want advertisements, and news channels want TRP. So once people start listening to programs where real scientists go and do talks, if there is enough awareness and people are engaged with scientists, and scientists are ready to talk to journalists. I have seen a lot of colleagues who really are terrible at this. They don't want to talk to journalists. So then journalists will go and talk to whoever wants to talk. And then you are going to get all of this pseudoscience propagated through YOLO journalism. So we cannot just blame the media. I claim to be a scientist and I give them out things, they'll take it. So again, the onus is on us to go connect with the media people and give them the real science. And always speak out whenever you see that there's something out there in the media which is wrong. Criticize it, pick it up and criticize it on Twitter, on Facebook, on whatever social media you are on. Bring it out and tell people, please don't trust this. So every time I get a WhatsApp message from someone which has some pseudoscience in it, I make it a point to reply back to the person saying, this is wrong. Please don't propagate this.
Great. Another question from Dr. Jayaraman. He's asking, what will be the acceptance of research work if it is communicated to the media and public before formal publication?
You should never do that. Please don't ever do that, because that is something which will eventually be affecting the public trust of science. If we all go through peer review for a reason, right? It's not to criticize, but peer review has a different purpose. Sometimes we are so engrossed in our research, we don't see some problems with it, and peer review brings it out. So I might put up a preprint thinking this is the best research in the world, but tomorrow somebody points out a problem in it. This is what peer review is going to weed out. So please, I know we are excited, but wait till your paper is accepted for publication before you talk to a journalist.
Okay, so here is a question which I don't understand clearly. Perhaps you know. Dr. A.P. Jarajan is asking, could you please explain the application suitability of Deloitte model of business chemistry to science leadership? Deloitte model of business chemistry to science leadership. Kind of strange question. I don't know what this Deloitte model of business chemistry is all about.
I don't know. Sorry, I can't answer that question because I don't know what that model is.
Okay, so we have another question. Smita Kumari from Uttar Pradesh is asking, what are the basic principles of effective leadership communication? Again, that's a general question.
Effective leadership communication. Be open, be inclusive, respect everybody's viewpoint, let others speak. Don't just give out your opinion and say, expect everyone to listen to you, because eventually they are going to go out and be disgusted with you. So if we are inclusive, if we respect people's opinions, sometimes we have to take decisions by ourselves. We cannot help it. But if we can take decisions by consulting everyone, make everyone feel that they are part of the team, give them responsibilities. You are the leader. You have to take the responsibility if something goes wrong. But when everything is going right, please appreciate everyone on the team. Give them more than their fair share of appreciation. Tell them that it's the team which achieved something, not you. But when something goes wrong, put yourself before the team and say, it's my mistake. I take all the blame. Then you are going to be a good leader.
That's really great. Yeah. Next question is from Krishna Kumar. How efficient communication would be beneficial in the classroom, having students with different capacities of understanding?
This is a problem that we all face. I can tell you what I try to do. I try to have very interactive classes, and which is what this online teaching is not helping with. Typically, I try to go into the students' sitting places and walk among them, try to make eye contact as much as possible, talk to them rather than tell them things, invite questions. There has been a time when I was teaching a first year class few years back, and I told them, okay, so I'd say I'm going to teach this topic, and today it's just an introduction, ice-breaking class. Next class, please come with questions, and we are going to begin with your questions. And I went to the class and I said, okay, where are your questions? And everybody gives me a blank look. Nobody has a question. I said, okay, I can't teach because I didn't bring any slides. I was going to discuss your questions. So I start walking out of the class. And then they're looking at each other. And then somebody says, no, ma'am, I have a question. And I go back and then we start. And then at the end of the class, they said, we didn't think you were serious about it when you said we have to ask questions, because until high school, these are first year kids and they just come out of school. And until now, everybody has told us, don't ask questions, don't disrupt the class. And then you come and say, ask questions. How do we believe that you're really asking us to do it? And it doesn't matter if a student is finding it difficult. I say, speak in Hindi, speak in Bangla, speak in some other language which you can speak in. Somebody will translate that to me. I'm sure there's another person who understands your language in the class. So language is not a barrier. Level of understanding is something the teacher has to come down and explain at a level. Some of the bright students might get bored. Doesn't matter. The last student in the class has to understand and go along the class. That is why they are in a class, right? And sometimes making groups where there are different levels of students who study together might help, depending on what you're teaching. If the students together work in a group where one student might have come, I teach biology, so somebody who has not studied biology in +2 might find it very difficult to cope when they have to now study compulsorily biology. And if I now make a team of people who have no biology background and some who don't have a biology background, and if they study together, that might help. So depending on what level you are targeting, there are ways in which we can cope with this. But a teacher's role is to take everyone along, not target the best student in class, not really always target the weakest student in class, give extra lessons for someone who's really weak, but kind of go with the middle. That helps.
Okay, so I have a question from Fatima. Fatima is asking from Allahabad, what does dogs teach us good leadership? Are there any leaders among dogs communities, especially in stray dogs, with respect to mate choice?
With respect to mate choice, no. They are promiscuously mating animals. Everybody mates with everybody. They mate within the family. They mate within the group. They mate with other stranger dogs. So they are really completely mixed when it comes to mating. Just yesterday, my student gave her MS thesis presentation where she has concluded that they don't really have strict hierarchies. So even though we think there is maybe this alpha, it's more a qualitative notion that we have. Data shows somebody might be an alpha when it comes to aggression against another group, but when it comes to interaction among themselves, the alpha might be someone different. So it looks like they have different roles with different behaviors to play among the groups. But they actually can teach us how to be very good families.
Okay. Yeah, there's one question from Riaz Ahmad from Jammu. There are some concepts like Reiki in Japan, chiropractic USA, crystal therapy, aromatherapy, cryotherapy, even homeopathy, Ayurveda, and all are legal in India. Do these count in science? Does it merit the popularity and its wide usage? If not, then why are they promoted?
Does not count as science is a one sentence answer. Science, the kind of science that we practice, modern science has a very standard methodology. So none of these follow the methods of science, which we call scientific now. Why is it there? This is what I've been talking about for the last 1 hour. I think that there is too much pseudoscience and we don't have a scientific temper. Though scientific temper was brilliantly incorporated in our constitution, unfortunately, I think we still haven't built a nation on scientific temper. And I think scientists need to take the blame for that. So we have to work towards it.
Right. Let me pick up a question from Digvijay Singh from Maharashtra. Due to lockdown and COVID-related anxiety, people across the world are more depressed. How can a leader in this context can improve the mindset of this audience?
See, depression is something which is a medical condition. We have to understand. I think the role of a good leader is to identify people who need help, who need therapy, and put them through the therapy. The role of the leader is not to tell people, don't be depressed, because somebody who is clinically depressed cannot help being depressed. We have to understand this. I have blood pressure, I need to take medication every day. Someone who has depression needs to take medication every day. The brain is part of the body, the nervous system is part of the body. Just like your heart needs treatment, your liver needs treatment, your brain also needs treatment. You have to give it that treatment. So we have to get out of this thing, that depression can be cured by talking to a friend or having someone to share your problems. So clinical depression and just being upset or sad about something or being bored are two very different things. So I think for the leadership, it is important to identify if somebody has clinical depression and respect the needs of this person and give this person the space to get treated. Sometimes they need much more support from the community. You have to understand that they might not be able to perform at a level as another person who does not have clinical depression. So this has to be considered as a medical situation and given appropriate medical attention. That is what a good leader should be doing.
Yeah. There are two students, actually their questions are almost similar. So let me put it one by one. One is from Sri Lakshmi. She's asking, how do we deal with clash of thoughts and disparities and get them into a single track or take the right decision within a group or department or institution? The other one in line with Sri Lakshmi, Kriti Gupta. What if there will be a clash with our senior faculty at your workplace and they won't be ready to listen to you? How can one deal with this situation?
See, I think all of us go through these situations while we are growing up with cousins. When it's among cousins, we have a fist fight and we sort it out. Or parents come and shout at us and they sort it out. But when we are adults, we cannot do either of these two. So we have to be more responsible. Dialogue is something which we require. I know we don't always have ideal departments and ideal institutes where dialogue is appreciated or younger people's voices are heard. And that's exactly what I said when I said that organizations like the GYA and the NEAS are trying to bring out voices of younger people because we are often not heard. So, of course, it's a situation to situation. There's a lot of variation, individual differences, but of course, we begin with dialogue. And often democracy can sort things out. If you take a vote, you might not win, but then if it's a democratic voting situation, you have to accept the other viewpoint. And we have to understand that just because you have lost a vote this time doesn't mean that you're not going to be vocal the next time too. Every time you have to put out your opinion forth, and then if there is a democratic mechanism of taking votes, then you have to accept what the majority tells. Of course, not everywhere we have democracy. We have strict hierarchies in many organizations. We have to accept that. My way of handling things is, yes, there are these problems, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop being vocal about it. I will keep trying. Sometimes I'll win, sometimes I will not, but that doesn't mean I'm going to keep mum about it. Because if we stay mum, we never change anything.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you one question? This is from Lavanya from Boston. She's asking, I'm a postdoc at Harvard. I'm interested to become a member of INEAS. Can I apply? Because I don't have any permanent job in India. How about GYA? I think Dr. Anindita got disconnected. We'll just wait for a while.
Yeah.
Can you hear
Yeah,
me? Am I
okay.
still
Yes,
there?
yes. Welcome back. Anindita,
Sorry.
here is one. Yeah, no problem. So we have a question here from Lavanya from Boston. I'm a postdoc at Harvard. I'm interested to become a member of INEAS. Can I apply because I don't have any permanent job in India? How about GYA? And do you offer any relaxation for women candidates with respect to age?
Okay, so ENIAS requires you to have a position in India for applying. So, but I'm sure you have ample time because our age limit is 40. And for women candidates who have needed a longer time or taken a break because of family reasons, we have age relaxation criteria too. So I'm sure you can come back to India and apply, Lavanya. For the GYA, yes, you can apply. The GYA does not require you to have a permanent position, and you can apply from anywhere in the world, irrespective of your nationality and your current place of residence. And in the GYA too, we have relaxation for the same reasons.
Yeah. There's a question from Keshav Goel. What is the responsibility of public towards scientists?
The public pays taxes, and the taxes support organizations, research institutes, pay fellowships, pay salaries of scientists, go into the grants that we all work on. So I think the responsibility of the public is huge. On the other hand, if you think about it, then for the building of a nation and for development of the science of a nation, public often demands answers from science, but the public also has to be more supportive of science. They should try to ask for scientists' viewpoints and scientific viewpoints more often. That is the ideal scenario. But of course, we cannot demand that the public do this. In the ideal situation, the public should engage. Uh, Many institutions across the country have open days. The public can walk into these institutions, learn about the science being done, and more people should try and engage and become part of the science of the country.
Okay, so as we are ending the fag end of the discussion, we are already offshoot, and we can have the last two questions, ma'am, Dr. Yogalashmi. So I'll pick up the last question here. Uh, Bidipta Roy Chaudhary is asking how to keep myself motivated to take up research and finish it and to not get frustrated in the middle of the course.
I think everyone who has done a PhD has been frustrated at some point of time or the other, because we are very young when we are doing a PhD. We want to finish something. We have many things to do. We want to, get quick results, and things don't work out. An instrument goes bad. We plan an experiment. Something doesn't work. All kinds of things where it's not in our control. And when we lose control of our experiments, we often get frustrated. But that's fine. What is important is, I often tell students in ISER Kolkata that Please don't pick a research lab for your PhD when you're applying because the person is a Nobel laureate or the person publishes in Nature and Science or has big grants. Please look at the profile, look at the science they are doing, and ask yourself if the questions interest you. A. B. Try and interact with the existing students in the lab to find out what kind of supervisor the person is, whether the kind of person you are going to spend 5 years with is the kind of supervisor you would really want to have. And this is, I often say, choosing a research lab is like an arranged marriage because you cannot have everything decided and you cannot, first find out and then go. And then it might fail. If after 1 year or 2 years of research, you think you're not motivated enough, please leave. Don't finish. Leave, restart, or do something else. Not everybody has to get a PhD. PhD is not the end of life. Also, you need to do a PhD because you enjoy the work. I remember Professor Gadekar had told me in one of our early encounters during our PhD that please understand that we are a privileged lot. We get paid for doing what is our passion. And this is the truth. If you are not passionate about the question that you're addressing, the research that you're doing, if it doesn't thrill you to find the next question to address, then you should not be doing a PhD on this subject. That is it. Find where your passion is and do that. Don't go for the paraphernalia or the glitter and glamour, because none of that is going to help eventually.
Yeah. The last question. It is something related to superstitions and then fake practices. There are two people, like one Anand Bora from Maharashtra. He's asking how to create a scientific society at the ground level, as there are most of the people in our society who believe in superstitions and fake practices. In line with Anand Bora, there is another person who's asking Shanu Huda. How can we address scientific findings and societal blind beliefs?
As I said, it's not a very quick process. It's a slow process. More people among scientists have to be involved. We need multiple breakthrough science societies, not one, who can go and work at the ground level. I often go out and do outreach talks for Breakthrough Science Society. I'm a member. But we also have to have the media with us who will help us propagate scientific beliefs, scientific practices. We need to train teachers, school teachers to motivate children in the classroom. We cannot just, I can go and talk in 10 schools. Felix can go and talk in 20 schools, but there are thousands of schools that we will not be able to reach. That is why we also need to do this at different levels. We need to engage school teachers, we need to engage social workers, we need to engage policymakers and engage them at different levels and work with the media finally to reach out to a larger number of people in the society. I was in a meeting in Vietnam where I met somebody from Sri Lanka, and I was really thrilled to hear that on Sri Lanka or a Sri Lankan TV, the national news channel, the national TV channel, and one private news channel, both of them host a scientist twice a week, and they go there and do talk shows on different issues. Sometimes they talk about some new research which has been done from Sri Lanka. Sometimes they talk about some health issue. Sometimes they talk about some superstition, and regularly they are. And he was saying that after doing this for some 2 years now, that is the channel, the private channel that continues to do it, because that is the program which has the highest TRP. That is what we need to go to. If Sri Lanka can do it, why can't India do it? Why can't our NDTVs and CNNs and India Todays and Aaj Taks, all of them, do science programs? When I was small, a kid, I remember UGC used to have regular programs on national television. In Bengali, we used to have something called Gyan Vigyan. And it was a daily half an hour show targeted towards school children where faculty from universities and colleges would come and speak and solve equations on the board or do small demonstrations. I was a kid. I often would not understand what they are talking about, but still I sat before the TV for half an hour every evening, thrilled to watch this. And this was black and white TV, no color changes, nothing happening. Still, it was thrilling because the way they did things. Why can't we do that and reach out to people? You don't have to tell them, don't believe in this superstition. If you give them scientific temper, they will stop believing in the superstition anyway, eventually.
Great, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was actually a pleasure talking to you and listening to you. I'm sure all the participants also would have enjoyed the session. I think they would have gained more experiences. Your experiences must have kindled their thoughts, and they would be benefited from this. Now, over to you, Dr. Felix.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anindita. It was really wonderful. You actually threw lights upon so many very important areas on the science communication and the role of science in society and scientific ethics. A lot of things that you actually shown, and it's really, we are really humbled to have you here with us. You really spent a lot of time, actually, almost 2 hours, I can say, 1.5 hours. And thank you so much, Dr. Anindita. And I wish you all the best with your, your works with different kinds of organization in the nation, including, your, of course, Inside COVID, where I'm also part of GYA. Now that you're in an entirely different, of course, you're working with GYA, but as a EC member, now that you are on a governing body of one of the most prestigious academy all around the world. So I hope your responsibility have skyrocketed. Now the whole planet wide, you would have to look at it. Because superstition is not just for an Indian local issue, you see, it is actually a big issue in various parts of Saharan Africa, for example, and also for the various parts of, the Latin America, including, the Christian pseudoscience is there. The religion and versus pseudoscience is everywhere. It's not just the Indian context.
People saying, is evolution true?
Exactly. Yes. So, for example, I read the story about I think it's Turkey. Yes, Turkey, they completely banned Darwin's theory of evolution to be taught in school. That's really shocking. So if you compare that situation with India, we are far, far ahead. So yeah, so I think your responsibilities are really tremendous now. I wish you all the best for your new role as the chair of the GYA, and continue this spirit, especially with the Breakthrough Science Society and lots of outreach activity you're doing. And my very best wishes for your theater and everything, yes, in Bengali, or everything, yes. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks a lot, Felix. It was a pleasure being here.
And okay, now allow.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Allow me to share. Yes, and our next speaker is Professor Shubha Tole, and she's a very renowned neuroscientist, scheduled for 11 o'clock. So I invite you all to join back at 11 o'clock tomorrow. So enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy your evening. Goodbye.